Mr. President, our armed forces have been asked to work miracles over the last 18 months, and they've performed. During a global pandemic, in the face of natural disasters and facing dangerous missions, our men and women in uniform have risen dutifully and faithfully to the challenge. Many of our service members have contracted and then recovered from COVID-19 over the last 18 months. And now, these same heroes are being placed in a corner by this administration. President Biden's COVID-19 vaccine requirement for the armed forces does not grant our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines the respect they deserve. And it could pose a challenge to recruitment and even to military readiness. This mandate, tied with President Biden's more sweeping general vaccine mandate, have put millions of Americans in difficult positions. In most cases, these are just everyday Americans. They're mothers and fathers, husbands and wives, just trying to put food on the table during what has, for many, been a difficult time. These still unwritten but very much efficacious mandates are forcing millions of our fellow citizens into a sort of second-class, unemployable status, placing countless of our neighbors on the economic and social fringes of our society. I've heard from almost 300 Utahns in recent days who are worried about losing their jobs due to the mandates. Some of these individuals are heroic members of our military. These service members were rightly praised for serving during a pandemic and through dangerous missions, but now are being forced out, possibly with limited or no retirement benefits because of the president's mandate. Let me just share with you a few of their stories. One soldier who reached out to me recently has served for 10 years in the military. He never received a single reprimand, whether written or verbal. He honorably and proudly served his nation. He's been informed that despite his years of successful active duty service, he will not receive an honorable discharge if he doesn't comply with the vaccine requirement. Accordingly, he asked to resign from the military. His commanders made clear that he would be barred from resignation. Then he sought a personal religious exemption. He was summarily told that his exemption request would be denied. Of his situation, he said, quote, "To be backed into a corner with two very bad options is both disheartening and sad, especially with what I've sacrificed and with what my family has sacrificed on behalf of the military," close quote. Another soldier told me his story. He's been in the Army for 18 years. All along, he was planning on retiring upon reaching 2 decades of service. He's about 18 months shy of reaching that point. Just 18 months from that retirement point that he's been working toward for nearly 2 decades. And now, because of the vaccine mandate, he's at risk of losing his benefits and not receiving an honorable discharge. Regarding his situation, he said, quote, "This will cause a substantial loss in pay and quality of life for myself and a large number of others I know," close quote. A third soldier reached out to my office in a similar retirement situation. This soldier has children who experienced complications with receiving the vaccine. The soldier also has a child with significant learning disabilities who he's worried about providing for. He said, quote, "This really could be a life-changing event for my family, and I feel strongly enough about it that I will risk all my benefits not to take the vaccine. I just wish I had a choice," close quote. Now, these stories just barely scratch the surface of the hundreds of stories that I've heard from people across my state, including many who are service members. These people, like millions of other Americans, deserve a better option. They've earned that. That's why today I'm asking that the Senate pass my Respecting Service Members Act. This bill would simply prohibit the Secretary of Defense from requiring COVID-19 vaccinations for our military. I'm grateful to my colleagues, Senators Braun and Tuberville, for joining me as co-sponsors. This is now the 7th time I've come to the Senate floor asking that the federal government take a more tempered, reasoned approach. And I've said each time, as I've said each time before, I'm not anti-vaccine. In fact, I believe the development of the COVID-19 vaccines was a miracle. I've been vaccinated, and I've encouraged every member of my family to be vaccinated, and they've done so. I think the vaccine is a good thing. These mandates are simply the wrong way of getting it done. Look, when we look at the employer vaccine mandate generally, the president doesn't have the authority. In fact, the federal government doesn't have that authority. This is not a power that belongs to the federal government to begin with. And, you know, even if it did, we haven't authorized the president to do this unilaterally. And even if we had, or even if we were now considering a measure that would give him that authority, it's worth noting here that there are so many other better, more reasoned ways to encourage vaccination. That's why I'm here today, and that's why I'll be back for as long as it takes to address these mandates, which are causing pain and suffering to hardworking moms and dads who don't want to have to be making a gut-wrenching choice between, on the one hand, receiving medical treatment that they don't want, whether for religious reasons or a health-related reason related to what their doctor has advised them, or some other compelling personal reason or otherwise. They shouldn't have to choose between receiving a medical treatment they don't want and forfeiting their ability to put bread on the table for their children. It's un-American, it's unfair, and it's immoral. And so, Mr. President, as if in legislative session, I ask unanimous consent that the Armed Services Committee be discharged from further consideration of S-2842 and that the Senate proceed to its immediate consideration. I further ask that the bill be considered read a third time and passed, and that the motion to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table.